Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am ranking and reviewing all the books I read in 2024. In total, I read 63 books, and I'm going to be talking about all of them today with you. I have a little tier list that I made. Top tier is favorite books of the year. Then we have, I would definitely recommend these. Like, they're really good. Then I have good/basic. Doesn't really bring out many feelings in me. And some can fit more into the good, and then some can fit more into the basic, but I just lumped it together because I didn't have space. The fourth tier, not for me, but not awful. And then the fifth tier is worst books that I read in 2024. So the first book I read in 2024 was Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the first book in the series. And I gave this 5 stars. I'm going to be putting this into the top tier. It was one of my favorites. It was closer to the bottom on my favorites list. So this was just a little whimsical, fun time. It's a portal fantasy, which I always love. I'm going to keep these reviews brief because I don't want this video to be an hour long. The next book I read was The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I gave this a 3.75. It was close to a 4. Actually, in the very beginning, it gave me a 5-star feeling, but once we got into the actual games, I wasn't feeling it as much, and the, fake relationship, I don't know, it just didn't work for me. I do want to continue with the series, and I am putting this in the would definitely recommend category, because it is still a good book. I did have good feelings towards it. Next, I read Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. I loved this book. There was a lot of religion in it though, so if you don't like that type of thing, probably don't pick this up, because Anne Bronte was very religious. Aside from that, I thought the romance was really sweet. I thought they were really good together. This would either go in the would recommend category or the favorites category. I gave it 4 stars. Could be closer to a 4.5. It's in either one of those categories. This is just about a governess who meets a man and they fall in love. Kind of dragged out, but I liked it. Then I read The Phantom of the Opera. This was a little disappointing for me. I was expecting, I don't know, something different than what we got. At 3.5 stars. It just wasn't what I was expecting, and so I was kind of anticipating it more highly, so it was more of a letdown. I think I'll put this in the good category. Then I read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is the first time I've ever read a Jane Austen. I gave it 4 stars. Again, I built this up in my head to be something I was going to love so much, and I didn't feel as strongly when I read it. It's still going in the would definitely recommend category because it was still a good book. Just not necessarily what I was expecting. And I still gave it 4 stars, so obviously I still really enjoyed it. I think a reread is in order for that one. Then I read The Fury by Alex Michaelides. I gave this book 5 stars and I loved it. It was in my top 10 books of 2024, so this is going right to the top category. The Fury is about Elliot telling the story of what happened when him and a small group of people went to his famous friend's private island and someone got murdered. They were all stuck there. That's the story. His books are very mental health based. I just really enjoy his writing and his books, so this was a favorite of mine. Oh my lord, yeah, go. Okay, just go. Then I read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I did love this as I was reading it, but I really thought this was a thriller. Like, I was expecting a thriller, not like a gothic novel. You know, everyone was describing it as a thriller, so I took their word for it that it was going to be a thriller, so then I was disappointed when it wasn't thrilling to me. If I had read this just as a novel, a gothic novel, I think I would have loved this way more. I mean, I did do tabs, I don't know if you can see because they're very pale coloured. I loved the writing, and I love gothic fiction, but I only gave this 3.5 stars because I was so disappointed because I was expecting a thriller, and that's just not what it was to me. So I'm going to put this in the good category. I want to eventually reread this and see if my rating increases. For now, it's going in the good category. Then I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. Y'all hyped that up. I was expecting a lot. No, yeah, I was expecting something really good though. This book was not thrilling at all. The first majority of it. And then the actual reveal was stupid to me. I don't know. Half of the reveal was good, but then the other half was just stupid. And I'm not continuing in this series. And this is, I'm sorry, but it's going in the worst books that I read in 2024 because I was expecting so much, and then that's what I got. Next is Garlic and the Vampire. This was such a cute little graphic novel. I loved the art. Garlic was a sweet character to follow. I loved the idea of her having to go and meet the vampire. I just loved that because obviously I love vampires as well. Really like heartwarming. I would definitely recommend this. Next is The Reptile Room. This is the second book in the Series of Unfortunate Events series, and I loved this one more than the first. We'll put this in the definitely recommend category. I think it's a cute but sad book. Then I read The Skull. It's a picture book and it's meant for kids, but it's so dark. And I hated what happened in that story. I do not think that is appropriate for children. Maybe I'm just strict. I don't know, but I would never let my child, which I don't have a child, but when I have kids, I would not let them read that book. That's going in my worst category because that is not for children. And She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell was the next book. It was another hyped up book and I thought it was going to be amazing. And again, it didn't feel like a thriller. It felt like a documentary. It really felt like The Lovely Bones, the movie The Lovely Bones. It didn't feel like a thriller because I knew what was happening the whole time. Nothing was shocking. So I'm going to put this in the not for me category, I think. Either the good or the not for me category. And I read Fangs by Sarah Anderson. I didn't find this funny. It wasn't for me, so it's going in the not for me. I didn't find any of the jokes funny. I didn't care for the art style. Have nothing else to say, so. Next is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This was actually really good. I am not a romance girly. I don't read romance ever. It's really difficult for me to like a romance. I was actually pleasantly surprised. I still only gave it a 3.5 because I'm still not a romance girly. If I was, and all I read was romance, I would put that in top tier. That would be 5 out of 5 because I think for a romance it's got way more grit to it. So I will put this in the definitely recommend category even though I only gave it a 3.5 because for its genre it was really good. And I'm sorry that I'm not really giving you descriptions of these books. I just want to keep this video down in length because it's a lot to talk about. I read Garlic and the Witch, so the second book in the Garlic and the Vampire series. I did not like this one as much as the first. It was still nice. It didn't hit the same way the first one did, so I would still recommend it, but I think I'll put it in the good category. Okay, then I read Jane, the Fox and Me. This was, I'm not gonna lie, this was, well, I was interested because it was about Jane Eyre, a little girl finding joy in Jane Eyre. And I thought that would be cute to read about, except for the heavy topics in it. This girl gets bullied for being overweight, but the art shows the girl as skinny. It shows the girl as the same size as her bullies, and that did not sit right with me because if this was truly going to be a story about an overweight girl becoming confident in herself or just even accepting herself, why don't we start with actually making her fit the description instead of making her a skinny girl being called overweight, because that is so damaging to any little girl that reads that and says, oh, this is overweight. I don't know, I really didn't like that. I guess I'll just put it in the not for me category, but I did not agree with this book. Then I read Dracula by Bram Stoker. This was my first time reading Dracula. I gave it 5 stars, so it didn't disappoint. It was a little weird at some parts, but I still really enjoyed it. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. This is gonna shoot up to the top spot straight away. It's about a vampire, mostly told in diary format. Then I read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. I give this 4.5 stars. And I'm going to put this in the top category because I really enjoyed it, and I think if I reread it, it could be a 5. I enjoyed the story, writing. I definitely want to reread this. Okay. Then I read To Be Devoured. This is a novella. It's supposed to be dark, twisted and gory. It's about a girl who kind of wants to become a vulture. She's into dark, grotesque things, and she kind of wants to know what it's like to feast on human flesh. The things that happened in this book, they were just gross. So this is going in my worst books. Can we talk about the piglet? I won't talk about it. But I was reminded of it last night by my sister, the piglet scene, and I dreamed about that, and I saw it happening right in front of my eyes. Thanks, you're going to the bottom of the tier list. Then I read The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. The House Across the Lake is the typical lonely alcoholic woman trope who watches her neighbours, and as she's watching, she notices the woman start to drown and she goes out to save her, and then I guess the woman's kind of acting a bit weird after that, and we find out about what's going on with the woman. Got a bit ridiculous at the end. I think I'll put this in the good category. I don't really care. It was okay, you know, fun to read, I guess. Then I read Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney, and I really enjoyed this one. It was like a 4 to a 4.5. So sad. Sad and depressing. Set in a gothic house, and then there were nun-style killings about this family. Each has their own dark secrets. I will put this in the definitely recommend category. Then I read Rouge by Mona Awad. I had high hopes for this because I gave Bunny 5 stars. I liked some parts of it, specifically with her mother, but all that Tom Cruise shit, why? I want it to be a serious, how far people can take skincare and the way that they look. I didn't want that to be taken in a joking way, so I didn't like that. I think I ended up giving the book like a 2.5. I think I'm gonna put it in the good category because I did like parts, but it was a disappointment. Then I read The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. This was so depressing. I didn't like it before the twist. I thought it was weird and creepy and gross. And then we got the twist and I was like, okay, I understand now. But it made me feel really weird and lonely, empty. So it wasn't for me, but I think I'll keep it in the good category. I don't really want to get this one out because it's holding up other books. I don't know if you can see. I finally finished New Moon. The rain is getting heavier. I gave this 3 stars, but it was more 3 enjoyable stars. The rain is really loud right now. It wasn't 3, this is good. Good writing, good story stars. It was just the vibes. So I'm aware this is not a good book, but I'm putting it in the good category. And I read The Clinic by Kate Quinn. This is one of the worst books I read in 2024. It was one of the worst books I read in 2024. That twist was the stupidest I have read. I mean, it's probably not the stupidest thing I've read, but it was stupid, not believable. I had higher hopes for this book and they were not met. I gave this 1 star. Then I read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This wasn't for me. I gave it 3 stars, but it was 2. I'm American and I'm proud. I don't know if that's rude of me to say, but I suppose I'll just put it in the basic, I didn't really care for it 1. Then I read The Field Guide by Holly Black. This was such a cute book. I've already read it before. It was a reread. I appreciated it much more the second time around because I was really enjoying fairy type books. I mean, this was like the start of me enjoying the fairy type books. It's a cute children's book, but I mean, it could be enjoyed by all ages, and I would put this in the definitely recommend category. Then I read the sequel to Seeing Stone, and I did not enjoy this one as much. It was still enjoyable, but it was not as good as the first one. For me, I just put that one in good. Then I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. I was really enjoying this in the beginning. It was giving me the 5-star feeling, and then I just like lost interest. I think because I took too long to read it, and whenever I do that I always lose interest and I hate myself for it because it's not the book's fault. So I think I need to reread this one, but I ended up giving it like a 3.5. I would still put this in the definitely recommend category because I was really enjoying it before I effed it up for myself. I read Coraline by Neil Gaiman. This was also a reread. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I love the cat. Coraline is way nicer of a person in the book than she is in the movie. Also, Wybie does not exist in the book. I would put this in the definitely recommend category. And I read The Last Unicorn by Peter Beagle, and this is one of my favorite books of the year. I gave it 5 stars and it's going straight to the top. It was such a sweet story, whimsical, heartwarming, about a unicorn and her adventure to find more of her kind. Because she heard that she was the only one left, she wanted to prove that wrong and find the other unicorns, and it was just so sweet. I read Lucinda's Secret, which is the 3rd Spiderwick book. I liked this one more than the second one, but less than the first, so I'll still just put this one in the good category. Then I read The Wide Window by Minnie Snicket, the second book in the series of Unfortunate Events series, and I like all the books in this series. I haven't read them all, but I love the characters and the storyline. But this one kind of disturbed me a little bit. I don't know. It's just a little bit disturbing, I think. But I still recommend these books because they are cute. Then I read The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell, and I loved this book. 5 stars. It's shooting to the top. This got me out of a slump, and I was so happy while I was reading it. I enjoyed it so much. I don't think that other people would necessarily feel the same way because it is a slow burn story. I loved it, and it's going to the top. Then I read The Miserable Mill, 4th in the series. This one was okay. This was okay. I'd put it in the good category. I don't have much to say about that one. And I read The Velveteen Rabbit, a nice story about a little toy stuffed rabbit. It's adventures. I won't say into what. It is really sweet, and if you haven't read it, I would recommend it, and I would put it in the recommend category. The recommend category as well. Then I read The Vampire by John William Polidori. I don't remember this book much. I gave it 3.5/4, and I put it in the good category, I think. The original vampire story. I needed to read it. If I want to be a true vampire lover, I have to read the original source material. Then I read Prince Caspian. This one was more disappointing. I gave it 4 still, but it didn't meet my expectations. This is either the good or the recommend, but I think the good. Then I read AJ, End of Story by AJ Finn. This is his 2nd book since he wrote The Woman in the Window, so I was looking forward to it because I enjoyed that one. At first I hated this book. Like, I hated it, and I just wanted to DNF. But my sister read it and gave it 5 stars and wanted me to persevere, and I wanted to persevere. And the twist I actually enjoyed. I think some people don't like it, but I thought it was well done and I enjoyed it. So for that, I gave it 3 stars. I think I would put this in the good category. Then I read Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I had the 5-star feeling in the beginning of this one, but then something to do with the tent cutting really threw me off. I was like, okay, that's what we're gonna do. It's a book about a man named Ethan whose best friend, Billy, went missing when they were 10 years old, 30 years ago, and he's coming back to his childhood home, and he has a lot of trauma to do with this, and he's finding out what really happened to Billy. I still enjoyed this. I upped my rating from a 3 to a 4. Very mundane. It was just very like, this could happen in real life, not something like you would expect to happen in a thriller, because you expect thrillers to be dramatic, and this was more like, this could just happen. I know a lot of people don't like it. I put that in the recommend category. Then I read the novella Red as Blood and White as Bone, and this was really good. I gave it a 4/4.5. I thought it was a really well done, dark fairy tale, and you should definitely read it if you like sort of dark fairy tales, and I would put this in the definitely recommend category. I read The Locked Door by Frida McFadden. I didn't care for this one. I'm putting this in the not awful but not for me category. I am going to remove the child books from this tier list because there is not enough space. It is not big enough for me to fit all these books, so I need to remove some, and I decided I would go with the children's books to remove. Then I read Do Not Open by Kirsten Modlin. This was not good. This was just to boost my goal. At first I was interested, but the actual story was not good. So at that point it was just to boost my goal. I'm putting it in the not for me category. I read And Then There Were None, which is up there, so I'm not gonna grab it, by Agatha Christie. I gave this a 4-star. Enjoyed the different characters stuck on the island. That was a good setting. I liked that. The twist, I was expecting it to be really amazing because everybody says it's really amazing. It was a twist. But I'm still giving it a 4-star because it was still good. And that's going in the recommend category. Then I read The Witch Would Not by Olivia Atwater. I gave this 5 stars and I loved it. It's a gothic romance with fairies. Again, I'm not a romance girly, but this really did it for me. And highly recommend it if you like gothic, Victorian era fairy romance. And this is going in the top tier. You best believe. And I read Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. And I gave this 4.5 and really enjoyed it, following Anne Shirley and the rest of her childhood growing up in Green Gables. I'm putting this in the favourites tier. Then I read Ward D by Freda McFadden, and I thought this was better than the others read this year, but still not great. This might go in the good category or the one below it, I'm not sure. Then I read The Night Guest. Cute pink novella that sounds really interesting, about a woman who is tired and drained every single day, and she puts on like a Fitbit or something and finds out that she walked like 12,000 steps in her sleep. It's not as interesting when you read it. Not for me, at least. I know a lot of people actually enjoyed it. I am not one of those people. Actually, it was one of the worst books I read this year. I didn't understand it. If you want to put my dislike down to not getting it, then fine. I didn't get it. And to be honest, I don't care to get it. Then I read Do Not Disturb by Freda McFadden, and I thought this one was the best out of all the ones I've read so far this year. Still not great, but it's her best that I've read so far, apart from The Never Lie. That's my favourite of hers so far, and that was still only a 3.5. Freda McFadden is not an author for me, but I like to read her books because they're quick, easy, and usually entertaining. And in the good category, I think. Then I read The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, and this was a real disappointment for me. I gave it 2 stars. I was expecting this to be a 5-star read. I haven't watched the show, so I didn't know anything about the book, and it was just a whole lot of nothing. The characters didn't take the hauntings seriously. It was all just them being lazy, lounging around. It wasn't for me. I didn't like it, and it's going in the not for me category. Then, briefly, I will just mention that I read The Little Old Lady Who Was Afraid of Nothing, or Who Was Not Afraid of Anything. I read this, it's just a children's picture book. I wanted to get my goal, I wanted to reach my goal, and it was Halloween, and it was a Halloween themed book, so I gave it a go. It was good. I would put it in the good category, but I'm not going to put it there because it will take up space. Then I read Salt and Broom by Sharon Lynn Fisher. I thought this one was really good. It was a Jane Eyre retelling with fairies and witches and magic. I had a good time with it. It was a little dragged out in some parts, but it was still overall a good experience. I'll put it in the favorites tier because it was in my favorite books video of 2024. Then I read The Little Witch by M. Rickett. This is a reread. I read it last year and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it less this time around, I think, but it was still a good Halloween book. It is sad and a little bit weird, but I gave it 4 stars and I'd put it in the recommend category. Then I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. I love Gilmore Girls. I haven't actually finished the series yet, but I still love it. The vibes and everything. So when this was described, well, when this is literal Gilmore Girls fan fiction, I wanted to read it and I gave it 2 stars and I didn't enjoy it. Struggled through it. I didn't like it. It was boring. I said I'm not a romance girly, and this is going in the not for me category. Then I read Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen, and this is my second Jane Austen. So I've read 2 of her books this year, and this one was even more disappointing than Pride and Prejudice for me. I gave this 3.5 stars. I was expecting it to be an actual gothic novel, but it was just a gothic satire, which it is described as that, but I was hoping that it would be more gothic, but the gothic side only came in like this far into the book. And it's like, hello, this was full of like nothing. It was pretty disappointing and probably just gonna go in the good category. Then I read Final Girls by Riley Sager. I was debating whether or not to give it a 3.5 or a 4 because I was enjoying it and I read it really fast. Ultimately, I gave it a 3.5 because the twist didn't wow me. I was expecting it from like this point onwards, and we don't learn until like the end of the book. Yeah, it was disappointing. I did enjoy reading this book. I like slasher movies, like Scream and stuff, so this was described as like for slasher lovers, and I do agree because it was kind of like a slasher. I might put this in the good or the recommend category. Then I read The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. I had the 5-star feeling, but then the twist, it fell off for me. Both timelines lost me completely. I was even debating giving it a 4. I was gonna give it less, but I was like, I'll just give it a 4 because I was enjoying it a lot in the first half. And I will put it in the recommend category. Then I read My Beloved Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This was a reread. I loved it even more the second time around. It solidified the all-time favorite status. We all know Frankenstein. He creates life. He thinks it's a monster, an abomination, and he wants to destroy it. I loved this book, and it is absolutely going to the top. Absolutely love it, and everybody should read it. Then I read The Christmas Guest by Peter Swanson. This is just a Christmassy novella. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. The twist was good, I think. A little open-ended, I guess. I would put this in the recommend category. Then I read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and it wasn't for me. I'm sorry. I'm probably gonna put it in the wasn't for me category. I was expecting more. I was kind of just bored. Then I read The Gift by Frida McFadden. This is a novelette for Christmas. I read it this month in December in my 24-hour reading vlog, and it was just entertaining. I gave it a 3 because it was entertaining. Probably gonna put it in the good category, I guess. I read The Family Game by Catherine Steedman, and I didn't like this one. I gave it like a 2, 2.5. I'm gonna put this in the not for me category because it wasn't bad, it just wasn't for me. And then lastly, finished off the year with Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Left me very heartbroken. It's a 5-star and I love it, and it's obviously going to go in the top section. That is all the 63 books I read in 2024. I did reorder it in the tier list from best to worst of each tier. I will put that on the screen so you can see how it is organized. And yes, it's not including the children's books, so it's just most of the books I read. I think there's like 54 on there. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry that I didn't go into detail about many of the books. Kind of tired talking about a lot of them. Let me know if you also read any of these books. I'd be interested to know. I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.